Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. As always, we're going to break down this 10-game slate over at DraftKings. Let's get right into it. If we help you out anyway, give this video a like. If we get 20 likes, I'll be happy, and we'll do more videos. All right, here we go. Position by position, we're going to point you to the best plays of the slate. Starting at point guard, Luka Doncic comes in with a 60-point fantasy projection. I don't know if we could trust ownership this early because he's only coming at under 8%. Are you looking to pay up for Luka, and how are you feeling up top at point guard in general?
I'm not really getting a lot of him right now. He's 11.6, like pretty much close to a ceiling salary for him. It's a huge slate. I think there are like 11 games on DK. So point guard's going to be stacked. There's a lot of value. There's mid-range value. There's cheap value. Someone that I do have quite a bit in a great matchup is Cade Cunningham again, 8,700 against Atlanta. Just a better value than Luka. Obviously, he doesn't necessarily have the 80 fantasy point ceiling Luka does, but for the dollar, I think you're getting more bang for your buck with Cade today.
Yeah, 100%. I love Cade. Just look at these prices and the projections for some of these guys. Trae Young is just way overpriced at this point. The matchup with the Pistons is great. Obviously, Trae can crush at any point. His projection's not bad, but the price is up there. SGA is up there. His projection's better. I definitely prefer SGA over Trae Young. I think I prefer SGA over Luka too, but I just don't think that's necessary. I think LaMelo looks pretty good at 9.6 in an up-tempo matchup with the Pacers. He's probably my second favorite high-end stud to pay for behind SGA, but in terms of value in the upper level at point guard, I'm with you. Cade Cunningham looks like the play at 8.7K, although Tyrese Haliburton at 8.1K against the Hornets looks really, really good. So I like him as a pivot off of Cade. Cade is pulling ownership at the moment at 13%. So like him quite a bit. There's a lot to like at point guard. There's Jordan Poole with a massive role against the Ja Morant and Desmond Bain-less Grizzlies. So he also is in play. Another guy pulling ownership is Steph Curry at 8.6K. Really not a good matchup on the road against the Cavs, but he's 15% owned for some reason. What are your thoughts on him at 8.6?
Don't really see the need. Like he's fine, but we haven't seen like a massive ceiling from him consistently in a long time. So don't really see the point in paying for him against Cleveland at a stacked position today. I do like the LaMelo call, by the way, because Miles Bridges is out. So there's going to be a lot of usage for him.
Yep, a little extra usage. Honestly, just stacking that Pacers-Hornets game is pretty appealing to me. I think LaMelo is discounted at this point, and Haliburton is just way too cheap for what he is capable of doing.
Brandon Ingram also has point guard eligibility now for some reason.
So
the Pelicans have no guards left, so I guess he's kind of the point guard. Matchup against Orlando is not good, but the usage should all be his, especially if Zion's out.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys we could talk about here. I just think, obviously, our focus should probably be on, I mean, personally, I think it's Cade and Haliburton. Those are my two favorite plays at point guard. If you want to go high end, I'm looking at LaMelo or SGA. What about value here? I mean, it's a huge slate. There's a lot of value that's going to pop up. You could talk mid-range, but let's talk like super savings. Who stands out the most as far as anybody who's like around 6K or less that we want to flock to at point guard?
Scottie Pippen without Morant is the obvious one.
6.5
against Washington. So that's kind of the guy. He's going to be really owned, I think, but it's fine. I don't mind Jaden Ivey as a pivot. Talked about him the other day. Good matchup tonight. Cheaper stuff. I liked TJ McConnell the other day. He was pretty good. I think he's questionable, but if he's in, he's 4,100. Neesmith is out. They've had a few injuries, so he's an okay punt. Amen Thompson, the minutes I think are going to be up a little bit for him tonight. They need a defender against Shea. It'll probably be him. He's under 5K, point guard, small forward eligible. Don't mind that. Andre Jackson started last night. He's 3,400 tonight. Should start again since they won. I would assume they will keep it together. He's just super cheap. Not a great per minute guy, but if he has that role, I think you can punt with him again tonight.
Yeah, keep an eye out for the possibility of Mike Conley being rested on the second leg of a back-to-back set. If that is the case, Dante DiVincenzo 5K flat would be a little bit interesting. We could even think about punting with somebody like Nah. The Celtics remain undermanned, so Peyton Pritchard at 5.2K against the Nets. Whether that game blows out or not, he looks like an okay value. If Mike Conley plays 4.7K, he's okay on a big slate like this. I don't really want to do that, but it's all right. What's the status of Jose Alvarado?
He played the last game. He's not on the injury report as far as I see.
Okay, so he's good to go. He is only 5.7, not a good matchup, but the price is good for the lack of bodies that the Pels have. The other guy I wanted to mention was going to be, where was he?
Russ.
Yeah, Russ. If Jamal Murray is still questionable, Russ's price has come up to, I think, 6.6. 6.6, yeah. So that's still a good price for what he's capable of doing. He had 50 fantasy points in the last game, and he had 47 and 40 the game before that. So he is still a borderline core play for me. Not the best matchup against Miami, but if Jamal Murray is still out with concussion symptoms, he looks really, really good. So obviously it's a big slate, a lot of time before lock. So if anything else opens up, you'll just have to adapt. So let's move over to shooting guard. Anthony Edwards leads the way with a 41-point fantasy projection. But as I mentioned, Jordan Poole, he is 1.4K cheaper, and he has almost the same projection. Don't really care about ownership. Poole just looks like a really good play, whether you use him at point guard or shooting guard. Memphis, not the easiest draw, but like I said, they are down key bodies, so I'm not really that worried about the matchup. And then you have Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, Derek White leading the way also as a part of that 5-pack of guys who are coming in with over a 40-point fantasy projection. Sticking first at that top tier of guys here in terms of projection, which of those shooting guards do you like?
I don't mind Booker. I don't mind Donovan Mitchell for 8.2. Still pretty cheap for him. Otherwise, I'm pretty much playing this in the mid-range. Ben Mathurin, still only 5.4 against Charlotte. Brandon Miller going to see a usage boost without Miles Bridges as well on the other side of that game, 6,300. I think Hero is okay, still under 7K, but I never feel like amazing about him when Miami's at full strength. And then Derek White, again, is always someone you can play. He's a little expensive too, but that might limit his ownership a little bit.
Yeah, he probably will end up being owned. I think if you're looking to pay at shooting guard, I think it is Derek White or Jordan Poole. Those are probably the two chalkier options because they are discounted for their roles. And Derek White has an awesome matchup against the Nets. So he'll probably end up being more owned. So I don't mind pivoting to Poole, but both look really, really good. Carrington at 5.5K is good value if we want to go down into that Mathurin range like you're talking about. Boston on the Pels, he's only 4.4K still. And if they're still going to be without bodies, I think we can look to him. What's he been doing lately?
37 and 38 minutes the last two games.
Yeah, so that role is awesome. Still way too cheap. Hawkins is out. Trey Murphy doubtful. Zion questionable. We know DeJounte and CJ are out. So matchup be damned. Boston looks like a really, really good value on this slate. Christian Brown, big minutes, 5.3K. His price really hasn't budged. I think he's a pretty good play too. Nice value. Not seeing any other direct punts that I'm in love with on this slate. Let me switch over to the value here. Luke Kennard, I get Memphis is down bad with injuries. So Luke Kennard, John Conchar, if he's in, those guys are cheap. I think I would rather just pay for Scottie Pippen at 6.5K. But they're both in play. There's nothing wrong with them. There's the ghost of Garrison Matthews, 3.3K. He looks like he's projecting for about 23 minutes. I don't want to do that, but it's there if you want to take that dive. I think that's about it as far as value that I would be approaching here. Trey Mann too for the Hornets. Who's out? Yeah, Miles Bridges is out. Brandon Miller he's probable. So Brandon Miller is back. But with Miles Bridges out and Grant Williams questionable, no, he's probable too. Still, with Miles Bridges out, I think Trey Mann is okay at 5K flat. Anybody else?
Mikal Bridges, but
forever and always the Knicks.
I mean, they're playing Milwaukee, who's a horrible defense, so I think you can always play the Knicks.
Hey, you know what though? The Bucks did win last night.
Congrats on beating Utah. Does Utah have a win all season?
They might not. Okay, moving over to small forward we go. We have Jason Tatum per usual. I swear Boston plays every night. He's coming in with the best projection by far at small forward with 51 fantasy points. Not projected for ownership though, because we have a ton of other studs and it's a massive slate. The matchup with the Nets is good. His 10.5K price is just right, but with no Jaylen Brown or Zinger, is he being overlooked a little bit too much here as like a stud to build around? I think that's possible. The only issue is there's a lot of good value 2K below him, whether it be Franz Wagner, Jalen Williams, or another guy with a huge role in Brandon Ingram. So price wise, those three guys look like better plays, but Tatum does look like a really good elite to build around. How do you feel about Tatum? And if you don't want Tatum, who are you targeting at small forward in the upper tier?
No, I don't really want Tatum. I'm kind of paying up for point guard instead. So like LaMelo or Cade would be guys I would play over him in terms of kind of flag plant spins. You can always play Tatum. I tend to be under on him, and it always fucks me, but it's a huge slate. So hopefully he will just kind of play to his median, and that'll be it. I think there's, again, a lot of mid-range value here. I mentioned Mathurin. I mentioned Amen Thompson, point guard, Brandon Miller. You can also play here Andre Jackson. You can play here Brandon Ingram. You can play here. Tari Eason is kind of Amen Thompson style, good per minute guy on the bench, limited-ish role, but the minutes could come up a little bit. Matchup against OKC's tough, of course, but it's okay, I think. Michael Porter with more usage with Gordon out and Jamal Murray questionable. Even Gordon being out, I think, makes him a pretty interesting play. And then if Murray's out, he looks even better. Not a good matchup, but I think it's fine. Franz Wagner for 8K, kind of priced up, but no Banchero. Should be plenty of usage for him. Don't mind the matchup against the Pelicans since the Pelicans have no players left. And I think Bradley Beal, I didn't mention at shooting guard, but he's 6,300. I don't think that's a bad kind of mid-range differentiator on the slate.
Yeah, it looks like he's probable, and that is a pretty good price, even though he's major third fiddle in that offense. Tough to really hope for a ceiling game from him. A couple other values I'll point out. Keyshawn George, another Washington Wizards guy that's just going to get minutes. He's projecting pretty well for his price. Najee Marshall, 4.8K, PJ Washington, and Derek Lively both remain out for Dallas. So you can use him at small forward or power forward. I prefer a different Mavs value, but he looks fine at 4.8K. Jalen Wells, his price is a little bit high at 5.9, but he is going to play a good amount of minutes, so he is okay. Jake LaRavia at 5.2. It might be a more fun, cheaper pivot that would get minutes as well. Cody Martin, how do you feel about that? 3.8K Cody Martin against the Pacers. That looks like a pretty good game to get exposure to. I like the price. I don't really trust him. I rarely do, but I think he should be in our player pool. He's going to garner a little bit of ownership, and I guess for good reason. Last guy I'll mention is Sam Hauser, 3.6K, just because the Celtics remain shorthanded and that game could blow out, so he could end up getting 25 to 30 minutes. I think that does it for that position. Anybody else stand out for you?
Nope.
All right. Moving on to power forward. Obviously, I believe Tatum's going to be at the top. It's actually Giannis. They're sharing almost an identical projection, so I feel like comparing the two, Tatum looks like the better play. You save about $700 in salary. Giannis is still obviously always in play, but he's 11.2K. They played last night. Could be a little bit tired too. And the Knicks are obviously not as fun of a matchup as the Nets can be. But behind those guys, though, is Jaren Jackson Jr., who just looks like a usage god on this slate. 7.2K, a really, really nice 45-point fantasy projection. He looks like chalky balls on this slate, but I don't really know if I can get away from him. The price and the projection and the matchup with the Wizards, it all looks really all too good to get to fade. Obviously, he can have issues with foul trouble, but boy, I like JJJ here. What are you thinking up top? Do you like Giannis? And what are your thoughts on Jackson?
Yeah, Jackson looks great. A little concerned about the minutes for him, but the usage should be there without Morant. There are other power forwards on that team. Santi Aldama, Jake LaRavia, you can play, look pretty good values as well. Tobias Harris is still under 6K. I like picking on Atlanta. Giannis is fine. I'm just not really paying all the way up. Like I said, I think the kind of mid-range value stands out on this slate. You can always play Giannis, but not a huge priority for me. And then a couple power forward only plays. Peyton Watson, again, no Aaron Gordon, 4,600 should have a role. And Jalen Johnson, I always think looks really good in the minutes he plays, 8,500. Matchup against the Pistons is fine. And then if I'm paying up, I think I prefer Zion if he's into Giannis, just because it's a 2K discount. And they're missing a ton of guys, like we've said. So Zion, if he's good to go, should have a huge role as usual. Yeah,
I'm just not seeing the reason to pay up at this point at power forward. There's just like 8 really good plays in like the 8K range, high 7, mid 8K range that look really, really good. JJJ is going to be the top one for me, but Franz Wagner is probably right behind him, and Julius Randle, Jalen Williams, these guys all look good. Kevin Durant might go a little bit overlooked. Matchup with Dallas. not an insane projection relative to the slate and the other guys around him, but he's not going to be owned because of that. As far as lower mid-range guys, you mentioned Josh Hart, Michael Porter Jr. Naz Reid at 5.7K off the bench against the Blazers. That looks pretty good. I don't mind him as a value. Looks like he's not going to garner any ownership. Grant Williams is pulling ownership at 4.3K against the Pacers. How do you feel about that?
Fine.
Are you going to be getting to him?
Yeah, I mean, they have no centers. They have no Miles Bridges. He's a totally fine play.
Okay. All right. I think that does it for power forward. I will mention Tristan Da Silva once again, just because Orlando has all these injuries. Let's see. What's he actually been doing? He's only power forward eligible now. That's fun. Only 23 minutes last game with 9 fantasy points. So he is definitely dicey, but he's 4.1K and he should get some run. Love the call on Peyton Watson. His price has come up a little bit, but he looks really, really good. All right, let's wrap things up at center. Just think about Jokic leads away with a 66-point fantasy projection. He's going to be pretty chalky, about 20% owned. I mean, he's almost 12K, but I don't really like playing centers against Bam Bam. I don't know. I don't think he's a must, as the ownership is kind of suggesting. This really feels like a slate where I don't really want to spend up and get an elite necessarily. I kind of want to live in the mid-range. Miles Turner has one of the best projections of the slate. He is also chalky balls, but he looks amazing at 6.2K. Cat looks really, really good at 8.4K. So it's just like too many good mid-range or lower-end guys that are projecting insanely well. So yeah, are you in on Jokic, or are you kind of feeling the same where you just want to drop down and get these awesome values?
I think Jokic is an off play. There's a value center. People are paid out. You have Goga, you have Gafford, you have Emius Queta, you have Grant Williams, like we talked about. Isaiah Stewart should start for Jalen Duren. Like, there are tons of cheap centers. Miles Turner is going to pull ownership. So not sure Jokic is going to be super chalky. I'm not scared of the matchup against Bam. I just think Jokic can bully anybody. Not really worried about that. So he's a fantastic play. I would like to pay up for him if I can. But like I said, there's a ton of pay down options if you want to go that route.
Yeah. Speaking of Bam, he actually looks like a pretty good value himself at 7.4K, though. Projection for 42 fantasy points. Obviously not the easiest matchup, but he is kind of too cheap at this point. Lots of good centers. Şengün is always on my radar, 8.1K, a little bit too cheap. You got Siakam, Jared Allen, Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Ayton. The minutes are a little bit wonky for Ayton, but like all these guys, even though their projections are not amazing, they all feel a little bit too cheap, and just center is so loaded. So I don't know. I think overall my personal strategy on this slate is just build the best team possible without committing all my funds to Luka, Jokic, and Giannis. I think like Cat or LaMelo, probably LaMelo at this point, but like those guys can serve as my elite on this slate. Cat's pushing for a 50-point fantasy projection. LaMelo's pushing for a 50-point fantasy projection. Like that feels like elite territory to me. So anyways, are there any other values of center that you're liking?
Just Edie. That would be the only one I don't think I named.
Yeah. All right. So to wrap things up, what is your number one flag plant and your overall strategy going into tonight?
I guess the flag plant would be paying up for one of those point guards like LaMelo. And then I also don't mind paying up at center if the field's going to be paying down. Yeah,
that was a fair point. My just general strategy in flag plant is going to be to probably go studless. I'm not going to pay over 10K for anybody on this slate because there's just way too much value to fall in love with. All right. Thanks for watching. If anything else we said here helps you out, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Good luck.